record this and we'll jump in. For anyone that didn't see it, this is kind of what we're trying to build here. Really, we just got started with the background and we just barely got to working on this button up here. So kind of my goal here for the next little bit is to talk about, how we can kind of get this neomorphic look here. And then what we'll do is we'll extract that out into a sub view and make it so that this view is reusable. For example, here, we could probably use it here and here as well, not to mention over here if we wanted to kind of worry about giving it a frame later. So there's a lot that is kind of reusable here, which is really nice. So let me jump back to where we were. So this is kind of what we've got at this point, and let me pull this up. Too many windows, okay. So that's kind of what we're working towards. And just kind of as a reminder, everything in SwiftUI is kind of just going to be centered until we add it to VStacks and add spacers and kind of end up laying it out. But we're just going to try to get more or less this look here, kind of right in the middle, and then we can worry about putting it in the right place here. So kind of from where we left off here, we've got this image. And I wanted to kind of get your take on this, because now we're doing a little bit more than the design itself is showing, where we need to think about, well, okay, what does this button look like when it's pressed, right? Do we want it to look like it is down here, that's orange, or these two different kind of separate buttons? Like, we need to kind of expand on the design a little bit. So does anyone have any ideas what they think would look good? Or
can we just invert the numbers or invert the colors while it's pressed and then like change them back when it's released?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of noticing that the kind of like, the embossed look, and then I'm just wondering what you get for free, right? So given that if we try to make it look as close as possible, what does Xcode do, like you say, when it gets depressed? Is there something that comes?
Sure, yeah, great question. Let me show you. I'm gonna move, where was that? There we go, okay. So if we look at, I'm gonna pull this back because I was working on this over lunch. There we go. Okay, so this button right here, it's styled and everything. When I tap it, all we get is kind of this behavior here. That's sort of the norm. And if it's just like a, what am I trying to say? Like a normal looking button, it would probably look something similar where it just kind of highlights it a little bit. I think because this is so gray, it's a little, it almost looks like it's going away, but it's just going to kind of lighten it a little bit. What I was messing around with is you can actually make your own button style. Whoa. Oh, there we go. To say, well, I want it to look one completely different way. So I just did something super simple here, but I made it go darker, for example. So it's up to us. Do we want to just build out kind of the, I guess, normal button behavior, or do we want to kind of have some customizability as far as selection goes here? It's up to you guys.
Unless anyone's opposed, I'd be down to do the default now, get it built out, and then go back and customize after.
Okay. Is anyone opposed?
No.
Okay. All right. All right, then we'll go with that. Okay. So let's kind of get this color going here and get the kind of the neomorphic shadows going on. So we've got the color, we've matched that color up. So let me grab the color of our button here, and it looks more or less the same. I don't know if anyone can tell if that's got much of a gradient, if anything. It's got a little bit of a shadow, but that's just a shadow. So I think we'll just go with this. So here's that color. So I'll just run into my assets folder here and make a color set. And again, we're not right now worrying about like a dark and light mode, but if we wanted to add it later, it would be a matter of just coming up with different colors, and that's about it. So I'll call this button maybe background.
I got a question. So
Yeah.
what are you using to make the color?
This is called Color Snapper 2, I think. If you just go to colorsnapper.com, there's a free download for that. And
Okay.
there's also a paid version. So for those of you that have never used a color set in the assets folder, just jump down to the plus button, hit new color set. And then I'm going to go over here on the right after I click on this color. And then I'll get this kind of section right here for the input method. And I'm just going to click on my input method and go to this 8-bit hexadecimal, and that will let me just paste in that hex code and get the color. And I don't need to kind of, you know, button go red, paste, or yeah, red, paste, blue, paste, green, paste. Okay, does everyone have that? Anyone need more time?
For the shadows, will you use a color picker as well?
I'm gonna just kind of mess around with the shadows for now. I'm gonna see if we can just use like white and maybe like a gray. Not quite sure on that one. We'll just have to, I sit there and tweak with the just tweak the shadows a lot. So I'm not quite sure. We'll get back to that though, for sure.
Cool.
So let's go back to our content view here. I hate how I have to resize the content view every time though, or the preview. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're gonna need to make this shape, the circle, and we're also gonna need to kind of make it bigger because right now we see that really our button is basically the size of our image, which is a little bit small here. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's say we want to, and again, guys, I'm still learning here, so I'm not quite sure, and we can mess around with these, but let's go ahead and add all of this sort of appearance to our image. And if we need to say, oh, that's actually better to be put on the button, we could change that real easily. Or if anyone knows, feel free to shout it out and make sure that, you know, I'm not doing something wrong. So let's just add some padding here and kind of get it more or less. We see, maybe let's actually change this frame back to, let's try something like 25 or so and see how that looks.
I did 20. It seemed to look okay.
20? Okay, we'll go with that. That's the best part, is we get that instant feedback, which is just amazing. So if we look here, I kind of see that there's about as wide of this image on kind of every side. So if we do a padding of 20 on all sides, that should more or less get us to what we want. Again, we can kind of tweak it, maybe a little bit more, like 24, something like that. So let's do we're going to use that clip shape here to get the circle. Let me just say circle. And it's not going to look like anything's happening yet. That's okay. And then what we should be able to do is add a background, and let's call color with our button background. Ooh, that's so subtle. Okay, my bad. We'll need to add the background first and then the clip shape, and then we'll get the get that behavior. So just to help you see it, we're gonna do color.white. So adding the background after doesn't do it right. I guess that makes sense. We have to apply the background first and then it will clip it. So just looking at this, because we have our gradient down here, it's a little bit hard to kind of see even the circle here that it's actually the same color. So let's maybe go ahead and move it up here so we can more or less see this a little better. So can anyone remind me how we could move our button up to this corner right here?
Put a spacer on the bottom of your V stack.
Perfect, yeah. Put a spacer, okay. That already looks a lot better. And then how do we make another spacer kick us this way?
Throw your button in a horizontal stack and then push it, then add the spacer after the button.
Yeah, perfect. So again, the best way that I've found to do this is if you hold the command key when you tap on your button, then we get this embed in H stack, and then it kind of embeds it and aligns everything or indents everything correctly for you. Then we can put a spacer right here, and there we go. That looks a lot better. It's almost like the color didn't seem right, but now it looks a lot better. Maybe it does have a gradient. I don't know, a lot of stuff going on there with that neomorphic button. Okay, so how could we maybe pull it out a little bit and make it so that we don't quite have as much, or it's not just pegged right to the edge?
I didn't go up. I don't know why.
It didn't go up?
Outside of the V stack.
So we've got one in the V stack and then one in the H stack. So make sure it's not like this in the Z stack that we have at the top, but it needs to be inside of that V stack.
Inside of the V stack?
Uh-huh. And then one inside of that new H stack.
I'm up. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem. And again, I'm doing this all in code because that's kind of what feels more natural to me. But again, you're more than welcome to grab a spacer from the object library and just drag it out and put it where you want it to be. And it'll tell you insert kind of at the bottom here, insert spacer in horizontal stack, add a spacer to a new vertical stack. So using this can be a nice visual way of doing it as well, if you're not quite comfortable with just like throwing in the code here. Okay, so let's do something like this where we say, let's add some padding onto our leading edge. And we could do, I don't know, 40 or so. I'm not worried about getting it perfect. I just kind of want it to sit out a little bit from our, from the edge, just so we can kind of design this. Okay, do we feel okay so far? Any questions, comments? All right, this is where it gets crazy because in very little time, we begin to get a look that looks fairly close to this, just with a few shadows, and it's just kind of blows your mind how quickly you can make something like this. So let's go down and continue with our image now, and let's add a dot shadow on here. So by default, you've kind of got two choices. You've got one that's just you will kind of apply a generic shadow on to your view, or you can customize it where you choose the color, you choose the radius, but also any offset. So from the X and Y axis. So really all this is from what I see, we've got a little bit of a X and Y kind of positive offset with a darker, maybe a black at a lighter opacity. And then we've got a white at a pretty light opacity just on kind of the negative X and Y. And that's a lot of it. And then, we've got kind of this inner ring that I've never done before, so we'll have to mess around with that. But really, there's not too much going on here once you kind of break it down. So let's maybe start with this part right here where we have kind of this darker, kind of, I guess, more natural looking shadow. So we're going to say color dot black, and we're just going to leave it at dot black. It's not going to look great, and then I'll show you how to add opacity to this. So I generally will start out with like a radius of, I don't know, 10 or so. We can just kind of mess around with this. So then let's choose an X of maybe 5 and a Y of 5. And we see that it adds a shadow, and like it doesn't look fantastic, but already that adds some depth and it looks, you know, more close to what we have here. Although it's a little intense here. So what we could do is if we go color.black.opacity, we can maybe bring this down to like 0.2 or so. And we get a much more subtle kind of look here. And the cool part is we can just mess around with this. We say maybe we want a little bit more. Maybe 0.3 is kind of closer to this, right? Let's just kind of get something working. I don't want to sit here and tweak it forever, but we'll maybe talk about how we could do this kind of inner ring here and so on. So then let's also do another shadow here for color.white, and then I'll maybe just do the opacity to be 0.3 as well. We'll do 10 for a radius, -5 and -5. And yeah, that looks like hardcore, but definitely gonna have to drop that down a little bit. So let's maybe say 0.1 or so. And it's crazy, just in doing that, it already begins to, you know, have kind of that neomorphic embossed style a little bit. It's definitely not
Nuts.
perfect.
Nuts.
I know, it's nuts, right? It's crazy. You're like, oh, it's just two shadows. Okay, that's not, you know, as daunting and hard as it looks, right?
Just out of curiosity, would a Z stack work? Like putting two circles in each other to get that ring?
To get this ring, yeah, that's something I was thinking, or maybe an overlay as well. I think that's what we're gonna have to do. What we might be able to also do something like we add this padding here to our background, and then we could add another padding and add more background. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of things we could try. So let's maybe do that. Let's do a Z stack. I think that's a decent idea. Real quick, before we move on here, are there any questions or comments about kind of how we've got this look here? Or how a shadow works or anything? You feel okay?
I mean, do you feel like you're immediately trying to turn all these things into functions, for lack of a better word, right? Because as you expand these, right, then you start to probably lose the bigger picture, right? 2 buttons and a title at the top. Instead, we've got like a page of text,
Totally.
and another page of text.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do, once we get this button more or less looking the way that we want, we're gonna extract it onto a subview and basically make it a reusable component where you're right, I mean, you're dealing with this content view that's like 200 lines of code. We'll separate these out so they're in much more manageable chunks. The content view, just kind of writing all of your code in here in the body, is nice to get something working, but then we'll separate it out and kind of move on to the next part and just, you know, slowly add, if that makes sense. But yeah, I agree, you're totally right.
FYI, if you pop the linear gradient into the background color for the button, looks way more awesome.
Does it? Okay,
Yeah.
try that. Just the same one that we had up here?
Yeah, I just did that one.
Cool. It almost, to me, looks like it's almost going from the top left to the bottom right, in a sense. I'm not quite sure. So let's do, do we do background? Let's try that. Yep, okay. So instead of the background with color, let's just do background and pop in that linear gradient and try. Ooh, yeah, that does look good. I like that. I think what I'm gonna do is start mine at the top left, or top leading, and then do bottom trailing. I think that maybe mimics a little bit more what we've got here. I think you're right, though. I think they are doing that. And again, like, it's a little bit hard because now we're dealing with things on you know, the same line, and it's like, where is the point where that becomes too much? And I think it kind of, you could definitely kind of manage this a little bit better. Just thinking about how to kind of make it not look quite as dense, I suppose, in a sense.
Starting to feel a little CSS to me, but
It really kind of is a little bit CSS-y. Really kind of this whole layout pattern is very similar to CSS. So maybe what we've got here is this other ring, and it's really just a flip of that gradient almost, where this is kind of lighter here, but it's darker here.
I think it might just be a solid color.
Might it? Yeah, maybe it's just like messing with my...
I did something similar where I just like put the shadows like pointing inward and then just flipped it. So like where the dark is on the bottom right and the light is on the top left, then you just put the dark on the top left and the light on the bottom right.
Okay, so you just did, so if we copy these, wait, so how did you get the shadow to go over it then?
Oh, I was more so talking like in theory so far.
Oh, gotcha, I see. No worries. Let's try this. Let's say overlay, and then I'm wondering if we can just do a, can we do a, let's see, what's it called? I think there's some sort of a blank view. I always forget what it's called though. Oh, empty view. So if we do empty view, add those shadows, but then go, yeah, I don't know about that. Because if we do, well, yeah, either way, I don't think that's quite gonna work.
it looks like you had them with inside the overlay. Was that your intent, or should it have been overlay? Okay.
Yeah, what I was trying to do is make it so that that empty view would live above the button, and then we could put the shadow there, but it would actually sort of show up. But I'm not quite sure that's actually what we want.
I guess as I was thinking of it, when do you draw with a solid color, or I guess a circle is a solid color, or I'm sorry, the border, is the border a solid color, or can the border be shaded?
It could be shaded. It could be a solid color. Something I actually just thought about, it was, if we go back to, not that one. There is, yeah, so we could do yeah, trim. Okay, I'm gonna grab this. So this, what I'm looking at here specifically is the, oh, that is it. Is these, if it will pull up these progress views. So we can see really all it is just a circle, but you just kind of cut out part of it. So we could just make this ring that isn't, you know, a full complete circle. Oh, although we could just do a smaller circle now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like the circle with the arrow image in there.
Yeah.
Put that in a V stack and then put a bigger circle behind it and then put the inner shadow on the bigger circle.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's maybe do that. I apologize.
That's what I was trying to say earlier. I don't think I worded it right.
No, I think I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. So let's go ahead and just, if you just, again, hold Command and click on our image here. Let's just, there is no embed in Z stack. So let's just do like embed in H stack, and then all you need to do is just change this to Z stack. So we want this to be the larger one. And then we want to put sort of this ring around it. So let's grab let's do this. We just say circle. Whoa. Okay. Do a frame and kind of actually get it to fit. Let's do 50 and 50. There we go. That's a little more manageable. Oh, sorry, the circle should be the bigger one. Right, yeah, my bad. So let's put the circle behind our, sorry guys, as you can see, like, I'm definitely not as prepared, and I hope you're still learning something from this.
Don't apologize.
I'm apologizing, man.
Yeah, we're just kind of figuring it out too. So
Okay.
you're all in.
All right. So if we do, yeah, okay, so here we go. So let's change this padding here to be something more like maybe 12 or so. That looks pretty good. And then we can see that we've now got our circle here. And again, like it's kind of doing what we saw this morning, where it's going outside of the bounds of our button here. So if we don't like that, we can, you know, mess around with that. We could maybe say, let's make it a little bit smaller or whatever, but let's stick with this for now, and then we can worry about that. Oh, or did it just, oh no, the button itself is okay. All right, we're good. So let's give this a foreground color.
Interesting. My circle doesn't have a color, or is that because you have it highlighted?
I don't know. I think
I don't have one either.
if yours isn't highlighted, you might try dropping this padding down, or it just like, so when it was super large, it was just blue, like when I didn't have anything at all with it.
That did it. That did it for me.
Okay. Mine was hidden until I changed that padding, because this was just too large, the circle itself here. So let me see here. It's hard for me to even figure out. Okay. I'll drop this in here. Well, I'm just going to put some color in there. Let's just maybe do, I'll just do a foreground color of like gray. It's not going to look fantastic, but then we can mess around with it. Let's maybe do like dark gray. Do they have a, okay, never mind. Let's try, I don't know. Does anyone have an idea on what color we could use? Like, for real, I can't decide if this is like, it almost looks like it's lighter up here and darker up here. So like the gradient is flipped almost. Let's try that just for fun. I'm gonna grab that linear gradient that we had earlier, throw in that background instead. And then I'm just gonna do top leading for the endpoint and bottom trailing for this starting point. Oh, sorry, just one parenthesis too many. Okay. Oh yeah. So let's clip that shape first into a circle. Or do we do it? Let's see, we need to do it after. There we go. Okay, that is not working. It's called, does a gradient count as a color? No. Oh, dot fill. All right, let's try that. Oh, this isn't a circle. Sorry. There we go. I'm making a mess of this. Give me 1 second and I'll let me make sure this works. There we go. Okay. All right. So it looks like what we need to do is add a fill onto our circle. So I've never done this before. I apologize. And then what we can do is add this linear gradient into our fill. And I think that more or less kind of matches with what we have here. Does anyone want me to like copy and paste this code? I know that probably is not the easiest code to fill in. So just for fun.
So is this like something like the navigation item under the leading?
Right, yeah. Something like that.
Oh, okay. But we're not in table view, right?
No, we're not in a table view.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if we look at this, this is what the button's going to look like. It just kind of, that actually doesn't look terrible, I don't think. Okay, questions, comments, other than my lack of preparedness here?
So what is in the array of colors? So like I see like 2 colors.
Yeah, so that's us determining the colors for the gradient. So like we've got the gradient working on our background view here. This is that BG gradient top. It's just a little bit of a lighter gray, and then BG gradient bottom is down here. So it's us saying, hey, I want you to start these colors at the bottom trailing and then end it at the top leading, or wherever you want, at the top to the bottom, etc.
Yeah.
So
question.
Yeah.
Do we have to move our shadows to the actual circle now? Because
I think we do. Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, I don't think I see it, but it's kind of.
Yeah, no, it's not quite there anymore. I think it's because we've now kind of added this Z stack here. So let's just grab these two shadows here. We might need to grab the clip shape as well. We might need to clip the shape on the Z stack itself. Let's see. And then I'm just going to put it right on the Z stack here. So just basically, this is where they used to be. Just put it down under the next curly brace. And that should look a lot closer to what we need here. And so we can see, like, I don't know if this gradient is quite, I think this is maybe a little bit too much on the top. So I think we'll just go with this for now, but we could tweak the colors later. I think this is fairly close. Again, a little hard to tell here, but. And we kind of messed up the size of our arrow here. So there's definitely a little bit more that could be had as far as tweaking, but maybe we'll save that for later and we can just kind of move on if that's cool. Unless anyone is just, their soul is crushed by the size here, which will be fine. I want to make sure that I'm doing things that, or we're all collectively doing things that you want to do and are interesting, right? I don't want this to be a session where you're like, this is not what I signed up for. So that's all. That's my worry, I suppose. Do we all feel okay so far? Can we move on, or is there anything that anyone wants to bring up or talk about here with this button?
Okay, so talk about, because like looking at the others, like the other buttons we have, I'm assuming it's basically going to be the basic same setup, like all the shadows, all the circles, all that stuff. Totally. Is there a way we can make like a button struct to just call to make each button and just fill in like how big they are and what we want it filled with?
Heck yes, there is.
Cool.
Right now. That is, I think, this is one of the, I think, the coolest parts of SwiftUI. Like I was saying, when Mark asked, you know, like, this is a ton of code, you're right. So what they've added is if we go up to our button and we say, basically everything that makes up our button here and is encapsulated by it is contained in here, we need to put somewhere else. Go ahead and hit, hold command again. Click on our button, and then there was this extract subview. This is so cool. If you've ever used like this refactor into function, or I always forget what it's called in just normal Swift code, or extract into function, something like that, kind of the same thing. So if we hit extract subview here, then it pulls it down into this extracted view struct down here. And so we can just call this maybe like, I don't know, basic button or something. That's kind of like a terrible name, but we'll call it that for now. And it should rename it here in our H stack, but it will also rename it down here in our struct. And so we've got some issues here. So the problem is, one, SwiftUI's error has sort of, the errors that it gives you aren't necessarily actually the problem. Like this, there's nothing wrong with this Z stack, but ultimately the problems are it's looking for like these buttons that don't exist, or these colors that don't exist because they're in our content view up here. So what we could do is just maybe pull these, well, I don't know if I want to make these like global, but we could probably, let's make,
you could put them in an enum.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking putting them in an enum. Let's make a new Swift file, just a vanilla Swift file here. Let's just call it like colors. And then just make an enum called colors. I don't know, there may be a few of you that have kind of never really seen an enum used like this before, which you will in the curriculum. I'm not sure everyone has seen this before. But what I'm going to do is then just copy my 3 colors here.
So in a past life, I would be completely paralyzed by whether colors would have a name collision or not. Is that cool here, or?
I think we should be okay. I don't believe there's anything called colors. And you know what you could do is you could either look in the documentation and or just try to get some autocomplete and see does something called colors already exist, right?
I've also seen people like do a constants file that's an enum called K, and then just put like k.colors, k.images, whatever.
Yeah.
I've always just made an extension off of UI color. Could you do the same thing with just color?
Oh yeah, that's actually not a bad idea.
I don't know if it's underlying it.
I actually really like that solution. Then we could get some nice autocomplete going as well. Let's maybe do that instead. So let's call extension on color, and we're going to need to import SwiftUI for it to recognize it. That's probably going to get I don't know. We should be okay. Yeah, great solution. Thanks, Marlon. I did not even think of that. Okay, do we all have this? All right. Okay, I'm gonna jump back here and now delete it from my content view. We don't need that anymore. And to get these colors, now all we need to do, in theory, is just do dot and dot there. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's a great suggestion. And now because it knows that these colors, it's just this array is, it's expecting an array of color objects. It is just able to use those from our static constants here. Then same thing down here, dot, and dot button color, dot BG gradient top, and BG gradient bottom. And so once you've got those fixed, we should see the same button here. One thing that I think we need to think about when we extract our subviews here is how we kind of want to leave the, let's see, how would I explain this? The job of the body is just to get the look, not necessarily the position when you extract it here. So as an example, at the very bottom, I've got this padding here that's padding it, 40 points to the left. That should not really be in here because every time I reuse this view, it's going to have that padding. So what I'm going to do instead is just cut out my padding down here from my button and then move the padding up here to where I make the basic button. And it's like it's the same thing, but it's just in a different place that makes it a little bit more reusable. And then this is more of a, hey, I need it to have this padding for this specific instance of my button, not for every single one. It's more of a kind of case-by-case type thing, if that makes sense.
My colors aren't working. Can you go back to that real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
And so conceptually speaking, can we now have a parameter to basic button that is, say, so you can, okay, because I was looking at it, it wasn't obvious that you could have parameters on that puppy.
And that's the cool part, is it's just a struct. So you guys already kind of have the prerequisite knowledge to do a lot of this. I think there would be a lot more mental overhead if you guys didn't already know Swift. But yes, it's Swift, so you're able to add any parameters you want. Sorry, was it Scott that needed this or someone else?
Yeah, I'm done. I don't know. Now it's working. I didn't change anything, but it's working. Thank you.
Again, like a clean and a build is never a bad idea. So let's do exactly what Mark is saying. So if we wanted to add another button on the right here with this different icon, well, how hard would that be? Not that hard. What I'm going to do is just make a bar. We'll just do image name. Again, like everything, if you've heard me as an instructor, this is just what I'm calling it. There's nothing special behind the name. You could call it name or image, whatever. I just think image name is very clear that it's for an image, but it's a string of the image's name. And then instead of arrow.left here, excuse me, we can put image name. And that's really kind of the biggest thing that we have here. Although if we wanted to, we could also put in the sizes of the button and everything, but we should be able to do quite a fair amount of customization with that after the fact, maybe. Kind of got a couple different frames, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out. So it's going to yell at us here. So it'll just want us to add that image name, and then we can do arrow.left. And we get that same thing here once we try again. And then if we copy that basic button, put one on the right, let's jump into our SF Symbols app and figure out what we need. I'm not actually quite sure what that needs to be.
Yeah, does Apple dare call it hamburger?
I'm very doubtful since they're very much anti-hamburger.
Oh, the other one, I think it's line.horizontal.3.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So we'll just do line.horizontal.3. There we go. We just made the same button in like 15 seconds, which is pretty dang cool. And we'll just maybe do a, a trailing padding of 40 again, kind of not really getting too specific with the number of our padding here.
No, I end up running them underwater.
But there we go.
Can you hang on 1 second? Sorry.
Yes, totally.
So I guess what's interesting here is that, it is a struct. Just the fact that we have a variable called image name has us making it look like we're calling a function called basic button.
Yeah.
Very, very wild.
I mean, really all an initializer is kind of a special function, right? I mean, Mark, I don't know if you've quite got there yet, but in Objective-C, an initializer is just a function. Like there's not even special syntax for it really. And then it's just a matter of adding these modifiers, for, in the instance of our back button, we need it to be kind of spaced out. So we added that padding that's more situational and not for every single button, but we've just kind of added the basic styling to the button. And then from there, you can kind of add your situational logic onto it. So.
Can you go down to where you have the gradients for the basic button? So I like messed mine up somehow when I was.
For sure. Randy, welcome in. Let me give you the project for where we're at right now. And no worries on taking a nap. That's fantastic. That's what this week is for.
If we want to get the buttons a little bolder, since we are using SF symbols, I played around just setting a font.
Yes.
Setting the font to be bold, made it bold.
Yeah, that's actually a great thing to bring up. Thank you. So that's something really cool with these SF symbols is they basically use fonts. If you've ever looked in the, I always go to that. If you ever go to Apple's documentation on SF symbols, they even tell you, hey, it's got, weights and scales. So you can say, I want it to be super light. You can do that. So if we wanted to do that, we could just go down to maybe right under our image here and say font. And then we've got kind of a couple choices here. We can use in the built-in text styles like caption, callouts, title, etc. Or you can do .system, and then it will also give you not just those text styles, but also like a size and a weight. And we can talk about the design in a second here. Let's do that. Let's do what Dimitri's saying here. System, headline. Oh, come on. Oh, font. That's fine. Headline dot weight bold. Perfect. Some of you may have noticed there's like a dot bold. From my testing, and I really just messed around with this once, it kind of seems like the dot weight dot bold is not actually quite the same as dot bold for whatever reason. It makes it look a little bit different. What am I missing here?
You got to move your font down, Spencer, because the resizable, I don't know, some of the stuff there doesn't like it.
Yeah, it's probably.
Because then it doesn't know it's an image.
Yeah. Yep, and that's another thing. You'll see some methods just return some view. Again, it's kind of that opaque return type where resizable is really kind of an image first thing. So again, that order matters. Awesome. Thanks for that, Sean. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Let's take a look and see what we have now. And it may be that we just, yeah, that's quite a bit closer. So, and a cool part with this as well is this, since we're using these built-in text styles, if you guys have learned a little bit about the accessibility framework, then it's going to scale with the user's, built-in iOS, I guess, system like font size, right? Where if they have a very large text for all of iOS, this will scale as well. And if you don't want that, then you could use a different one, just like a system font with a set weight or a set font size. Okay, how are we feeling with this?
My other button's on the bottom.
You might just need to put it in a different stack. Make sure it's in this H stack, not the V stack. So just pull it up here.
No, it's not it. It's in the H stack.
Can you share your screen? We can take a look.
You got it?
Yep.
So here's the H stack.
You'll just need to resume the preview.
I'm a loser. Thank you.
No, you're good, dude. It's weird, especially when it seems like it'll reload it sometimes and other times it won't. Especially even if you're still messing with that in that body, even it's just kind of finicky.
Command Alt P reloads your preview, and Command Alt Enter will hide and show your preview.
Oh, I didn't actually know about Command Alt Enter. That's awesome. Am I showing my screen? Oh, I am. Okay, we're good.
It's nice because when like it won't autofill your or autocomplete your whatever you're writing because it's running too slow because of SwiftUI, you just hide it, and that way it speeds it up. Then you can show it again.
Yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't have to sit there and render it. Cool. Let's get this playing now text going. And then
Can I just see your? It looks like you have. Oh wait. Go back to. Okay, I see it. So you put a leading and a trail. Okay, I'm good.
leading on this one, trailing on this one. And that's the thing is like you could probably do this in a bunch of different ways where we could say, well, actually, I want to put the padding on my H stack, right? It looks the exact same. I don't think they're, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any set standard for this. And that's kind of the thing is like, you could probably do it a bunch of ways. I think it's just so new that I haven't seen, like a fixed standard for many, many things here. So I think a lot of us are still learning at this point. And, SwiftUI is not, it's still in its infancy, so.
Hey, Spencer, any chance you can copy the code into Slack for the button when you pulled it out? I messed something up when I extracted it.
Just the basic button struct here?
Yeah, just that.
Would you mind if I just get that whole file? Will you copy that whole file? Oh, it's a different one, isn't it?
I just select that whole project.
Is that, okay, is that up to date?
Yep, the afternoon one. Oh, your Zoom might have not been working. I just said that I would select it too, though.
Oh, cool.
It's that March 30 afternoon zip.
Cool.
That's about 4 messages up.
Awesome sauce, thank you.
You are welcome.
Whoever threw out those commands, could you throw them in the Slack so that I can try to remember them?
Yeah. Ooh, that would be a great thing to add to our ongoing tips repo as well.
Definitely.
We should definitely update that for some SwiftUI. All right, so as far as this goes, now what we can do to put this in the center is just put another spacer in here and then put some text in between both of those spacers, like playing now. And then again, just like those, if you've ever used like those flexible space bars bar button items in like a toolbar. Kind of the same concept. It's just going to space everything out evenly. And it looks to me like this is about the same color as this button here. So let's use that one to begin with. And then it's going to be called button, but that'll give us something to start with. So we could say foreground color is that, I think it's just dot button color. Yeah. We could play around with our font here, do maybe like font dot, whoops, still on caps. There we go, font dot system. We'll do, let's try caption. Yeah, more or less like that. We could do bold or maybe black. Oh, there is no, oh, sorry. Wait.
I used headline dot small caps, and that seemed to nail it pretty
Gotcha.
perfect.
Headline. And then what did you do for the weight?
Small caps instead of a weight.
Small caps. Oh yeah, that looks fantastic. Thank you. Pretty dang close. Yeah. I think maybe our padding is a little bit too much. It sort of appears. You could maybe drop it down to something more like 30 or so.
I did 30. It looks way better.
Yeah, that does look better. Not quite encroaching so much. Let's see, does our text have any, doesn't really look like that has any shadow, so I think we'll leave that there for now. Okay, just as kind of like a quick poll, and I want you guys to be honest, how are you feeling about SwiftUI now as opposed to, you know, at the start of this? Like, do we feel like taking a design is manageable? Or is there still some, you know, some hesitation there? And that's totally cool.
I feel this is making like complicated stuff way simpler, but I feel like there's still gonna be a learning curve on this one.
Totally, and I'm not saying that at all. Really, if anything, I'm almost less concerned about how much you know with SwiftUI than I am with you taking a design that your company's gonna, you know, your designer's company or your company's designer is going to give you, and being able to break it down, because it's really just, if you think about, or if you've ever done any graphic design, it's you add a circle, then you add a shadow, then you add an image, and that's kind of the same thing that we're doing here in SwiftUI. It's just doing it in code, but there's not a huge difference, right? It's just step by step. And you could see, let's look back at this button. We added, you know, 8 or so different things to go from an image that looks like that, right, to making it look really, really good in very little time, right? And it's a matter of messing around with it, but that's really all there is to it. So I hope this doesn't seem super daunting to you. That's my goal, because that's what happened to me when Paul and I were at WWDC. We were both just sitting in our Airbnb looking at SwiftUI like, I have no idea how to do this. This is just beyond me. And after playing with it and after some killer, you know, tutorials, Paul Hudson's stuff, there's so many resources now that if you don't know how to do something, I think you'll be able to figure, you know, find some resource to help you.
Is this still Gen 1 of SwiftUI?
Basically, I mean, they've improved it a fair amount throughout the betas of Xcode since it's come out about a year ago. But I think, I don't know, Dimitri, if you have any other opinions on this, but I think it's still in a fairly sort of beta-ish state.
Yeah, I would mostly agree, especially since like collection views are not a thing, and there's like a lot of performance issues once you have tons of views on screen. So definitely try to see if it works, but don't be married to it, because you might need to switch back to UI kit for certain things.
Yeah, and like I have fairly recently become like a proponent and a fan of SwiftUI, but that doesn't mean it's going to solve everything. I mean, if you do some of Apple's tutorials on SwiftUI, which are fantastic, by the way, they do one that, you know, includes like a map view. There is no map view in SwiftUI, so you have to import an MK map view from UIKit. So it's not something that you'll be able to do, you know, completely, like one complete app, and you're going to be stealing some views from UIKit, even in a fully SwiftUI app. So
I think I kind of like that though, because there are some things.
you're muted.
How did that happen? Never mind. I was gonna say, I think I kind of, I'm okay with that though, you know, having to still borrow some things from, you know, to me, that just kind of makes it more rounded. It's just another tool, not a, you know.
A replacement, right? It's very much like with Swift and Objective-C, we can use them together. And like Sean said, you can add SwiftUI views to a UIKit app as well, which makes it, you know, I think a little bit easier for you to get into integrating it a little bit into your app, and then, you know, maybe slowly start replacing it, or just have both, where there are apps that use both Objective-C and Swift today because there's so much Objective-C code that they probably just don't want to refactor it, and it works fine. So kind of nice that there's a little interoperability there for sure. Okay, how are we feeling? Any other questions or comments before we maybe move on to this image view here?
For some reason, my preview keeps airing out, and it just says that it takes up more than 5 seconds, and it just spins.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I just got that one too.
Interesting. Are you able to like click the try again, and does that work, or is it just not?
It didn't before. It just kind of popped back up again saying that, yeah. And I do diagnostics, and it just says updating a preview from content view previews. Took more than 5 seconds. I'm like, you don't say, you already told me that.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's something that I like kind of made it bug out there for a second, or
yeah, I don't know if you have any apps you could close, or I've heard from some people like stopping the video on Zoom helps it run a little bit faster. I'm not sure. Let me, just as kind of a sanity check here, let me copy this whole file here and give that to you, and you can just paste that in. It may be that there's just some syntax error somewhere, and it's just not kind of really giving you the actual problem. I don't know. Yeah. Again, SwiftUI, it's new. It's my experience with it definitely isn't as, you know, I'm not as versed as I would love to be in it. So
right. No, cool. Thank you.
I don't think fixed everything.
What's that?
I said I finally fixed everything. So I think my only gripe with SwiftUI so far is that I can see like the pyramid of death, like, you know, the pyramid of doom as they call it. That can get a little confusing of like where certain things go. And I'm assuming that just, you know, it's just going to be a matter of time before you just, you know, get used to it. But that's really the only thing. I think this is awesome how quickly you build.
I definitely get that. I think one thing that they want you to do as much as you can is extract things out into subviews like we've done here. So even if we say, well, let's pull this entire, this image into its own thing or whatever, and just kind of modularize it that way, you'll have more structs here, but they're all separate and in theory also reusable as well. So I think that's more or less the direction they want you to kind of write your SwiftUI in.
That makes sense.
You can put these in different files too, right?
Totally. Yeah, it just puts it at the bottom, but if you want and to be like real organized about it, you could definitely put these all in different files. That would be totally fine.
Okay, cool. And for anyone, if you need to fix a lot of indentation, just Command A and then
Control I. Yep, that's a lifesaver.
It really is. Cool. I'm all caught up.
Awesome. So, you know, as an example, Marlon, we could say, well, let's put this whole kind of header in it, you know, this H stack in its own SwiftUI view or something, just to kind of keep going with that or whatever. So,
Okay, cool.
Okay, how are we feeling with this? Any other questions before we move on?
I was playing with Flutter a lot this weekend, and this is like really reminds me of Flutter. I'm like trying to like, I don't know, like I don't know, like,
Hear them?
yeah, it's just funny. I'm sorry. Somebody
No,
actually had a question.
No, it's all good. I've never actually used Flutter before. Scott, do you have a question?
I get this is obviously not what we've gone over, but I'm just very, very curious. And maybe I'm just like overthinking it, but all right. So for example, that says playing now, right? Let's say that like we wanted to attach that to the pause button. We had this all built out. We wanted that to say pause. Like, how do you get like data in here? Is kind of like, do you just kind of do what you're used to? Like have a variable at the top, like a Boolean, like something like that, and like then how would you tell the button like you know what I'm saying, or the label, I mean, like that it's paused now?
Totally. I totally know what you mean. Um, that's where it gets complicated. Yes. Short answer, yes. That you just have variables. Long answer or longer answer is there's a little bit of special syntax to make it so that you can modify parts of your struct without it being mutating and everything. There's a little bit of special stuff with SwiftUI, and I would love to get to that. That's in kind of my summary of what I wanted to do, getting into those property what are they called? Like these things like at state, environment object, observed object, those kind of things. I'd love to get into that. And I think with the pace that we're going, we should be able to by the end of the week, if not like tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay, so just wait.
Just wait.
Okay.
Or if you want, what we could do is make a really simple one where we kind of can jump down from not this stuff, but we could like do the play pause button. So maybe when it's paused, it just looks more or less like this. And then when it's playing, it looks like this orange, and we could flip between that with one of those variables.
Or maybe green. It might be sexy to go between red and green on the play pause
We
button.
can do that. It's up to you guys. Do you guys want to do that? Do you feel comfortable with kind of skipping this stuff in the middle for now?
I mean, we're already on the button. It would seem like, yeah, just kind of like keep adding layers to the button. Certainly seems reasonable to me.
Okay, let's do it.
Just a heads up too, I found that burning flower photo, so I put it in Slack if you guys want to download it.
Awesome.
Well, actually, yeah, I was thinking, how can we, does the iTunes API give you a cover art image?
Probably.
Because that'd be another slick thing that you could, yeah, maybe pull that in.
I'm sure it would. I've never used the iTunes API to specifically. I've never looked at an image before in there, but I'm sure it will give you one.
I personally say we go, that one, this big circle image looks simple enough to implement.
Yeah.
Just have it there.
Honestly, it would be a lot of what we did with this button where we have to have that circle in the background and everything. So are we?
I was just going to say, is it a button? Is it just a big button that's disabled kind of thing?
Yeah. And you could even pull this image out into its own thing. Or sorry, not the image, but rather, well, it kind of be like this whole Z stack, and you could put in your own different image. I don't know. You could try to make this as, like super, super modular, make it work even with this, but copying and pasting a lot of this code honestly wouldn't be a terrible thing to start with. And then we could kind of get into, yeah, you could make a custom modifier for sure.
Oh, so that's not just you said a button for the giant circle in the middle? That wouldn't be just like an image view?
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. It would be like, it would basically be this stack that's within our button here. So we could pull this Z stack out into its own view. And then use it in this button, but also you could use it not even, with the button itself.
Okay.
So again, thinking about like where to go modular is fantastic, but also it's just like any other code, I think, is sort of that premature optimization is the root of all evil. Like get something on the page first, and then you can look at your code and realize, crap, I'm, maybe reusing my code here, and try to refactor it later. But I don't think that that's anything you should worry about on kind of just your first draft of the code, if that makes sense. You know, if you can think about that in the future, great, but don't kill yourself over it either. Okay, let's maybe talk about these property. I always forget what they're called. Property bindings, I think. No, I can't remember. I'll look up the term in just a second. So let's do this. Let's again kind of just make this at the bottom here of our, well, yeah, that's fine. Let's just kind of put this right at kind of the bottom of our VStack. So it's basically going to be the last thing in here. And then we can quickly extract it out into a subview. So let's maybe just call this like our play pause button, but to begin with, we just need a button. I always forget what.
So I think I might have missed a subtlety of this discussion we just had. I mean, I guess in my mind, we would just be expanding basic button and adding maybe default parameters / new variables to, you know, get the slightly larger button out of it.
Yeah, I think it looks a little bit different. Like, well, I guess, yeah, we could do that. It really kind of does seem like the,
You're right. The play pause one has that kind of like inset feel to it, but again, certainly for the prior or the previous and next.
Oh, definitely. I'm just kind of thinking about this one for now, but yes, we could.
Gotcha. Okay.
This one, we might have to tweak it a little bit so we could pass in our own values for a couple, like the sizing, because we've kind of got two different sizes here for the frames. But yes, those ones I think we can definitely reuse. I was more kind of thinking towards this one. So I'm going to grab this action here, or this button, make it into, I'm just going to say, I'm not even going to worry about giving it an action right now. And then I'm just going to put some text in here just so it'll stop yelling at me. And then we can extract this into a subview. You could just write the struct yourself, but I just like doing it like this because it gives me a little bit of kind of free code that I don't have to write. And let's just maybe call this play pause button, or whatever you prefer is great. Just so we can kind of go back and forth here. You don't have to do this, but just so I don't have to scroll quite as much, I'm just gonna throw this struct above our basic button. So it's a little bit, I can kind of more or less have it all on the same screen at the same time here.
How did you extract?
Yeah, so let me go back and do that.
I'm sorry.
So no, you're good. If you just hold the command key and click on the button, it'll say extract subview right here.
Oh, awesome. And then you put play pause.
Right, yep, and just give it a new name and it's all kind of separated out for you, which I just think is fantastic. That's one thing that I thought was really kind of heavy and kind of cumbersome when I started learning SwiftUI was I didn't know about any of this stuff. So it was a lot of me moving things within brackets and stuff. It was just a lot of work.
Wow, and I was doing the right mouse click and then show actions, but it's nice to know that the command click will get you there faster, save you a
right.
Yeah, show right. Code actions is the same thing as a command click, which is great.
I actually didn't even know about that, show code actions.
Well, I was doing it the other way thinking, God, this is always so cumbersome. Why is it too quick?
It's so, I think that's so funny how we all learn different, you know, we're all used to different things. So we try different, you know, hotkeys and whatnot.
So just a quick, kind of more like a nitpicky question. Should the content view previews, should that like stay always at the bottom or?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I kind of attach that more than anything to whatever the view would be. So in this case, we're really just doing one preview here for, you know, this entire view. I think what I would probably do for my own sanity, if I knew I was going to, for example, reuse this play pause button or reuse this basic button, is pull it out into its own different file once I'm kind of satisfied with everything that I have in here, if that makes sense. But again, there's not, as far as I know, much of a standard for anything. So I would say do what suits you for now, and you could call that good.
That's what's responsible for getting everything to show up immediately.
Yeah, over here. So if you don't have this, then there is no preview.
Okay.
And you can do some cool stuff with this, like change the different environments to say, oh, I want to see what this is in dark mode or light mode. And you can even have more than one. So you could actually even say, I want there to be multiple devices here. I think you have to put that in a group. So then you could see like side by side, like this is what it looks like on an iPhone 10. This is what it looks like on an iPhone 8 or on light mode and dark mode and so on. You can add as many as you want, which it'll just render them all out at the same time.
That is insane.
It's pretty cool. You don't have to sit there and have 10 simulators open and jump through them. So I always forget the syntax for the content view previews or just the previews in general. I'm sure we could find an article on it if you're more interested, though.
That is awesome.
Should be more interested in. I should be more interested in it. All right. So now from here, we've kind of extracted this out. So let's get it to look like this. So what I'm going to say is we'll talk about this syntax here, but I'm going to do @state var, and then we'll just say like is playing. And then we'll say it's maybe true to begin with so that we start out with this pause icon here. And again, I'm not really going to worry about the action here for now. We'll just deal with the label, which is kind of the way that the button itself looks. I think a lot of what we're going to be doing here is going to be fairly similar to what we've got in this button here. So I think, well, I don't want to confuse you. Would it be confusing if we just kind of copied a lot of this code and I started ripping things out, or do we want to just start from kind of scratch here?
Do you mind if we start from scratch?
That's totally cool. So what I'm seeing here is we have a couple things. We've got this border view, which I think is, again, doing that same thing where we've got this kind of internal circles gradient going from kind of dark to light. And then it's this outer view is kind of going from dark to light the other way from kind of what I can tell, or at least it looks like that visually. I don't know if that's kind of an optical illusion there. So let's add a Z stack here so we can have those two circles, one for the background, one for the inner one here. I'm going to add a circle. And let me just do this so it'll stop yelling, and then I'll grab these colors for us. Throw those in the Zoom chat. And let's go into the assets folder real quick. So I'll maybe call this pause dark. And then we'll do like, or I don't know, man, naming things is so hard. Maybe pause, well, it's not really the top half the time.
I just called it pause dark orange.
Yeah. Yeah, putting orange on there makes sense. Let's do that. We can do pause light orange. Naming things is half the battle. There's that second one for the light orange.
Although probably in general, be careful about putting names in that kind of stuff, right? Because as soon as the artists come back to your project and say, oh, you've got a whole new color scheme, it really is, you know, really just is pause dark and pause light, because you never know what they're going to come back with.
That's definitely a fair point for sure. Yeah, for real though. Got to be flexible for sure. I'm going to leave it with orange, but I think that's honestly a great consideration to think about. So once you've got those in, let's just jump back to our colors extension here. And I'm just really going to copy one of these twice and just kind of rename it. So we'll say, I already forgot what we called it. So we'll say pause dark orange. Dark orange. It would be really cool if it would generate that for you from your colors. Orange, this file. We can go back to our content view. So let's make that fill that we found with a linear gradient. Then we need that gradient object. We'll pass in our dot pause. We'll start with the light orange. Do the dark orange. So then this circle specifically is this background one. So we'll do the light orange should start at the top leading. So kind of top left corner up here. We'll go down to the bottom trailing. Let's see if we can get this to render. Yeah, there we go. Although that doesn't quite look right. Did I mess up the colors? No, that's right. Okay, well, we'll go with it now for now. Although I'm super confused about why it's backwards. Okay.
Spencer, can you go to your assets folder?
Yeah, for sure.
They're capitalized. If you go to your colors in your colors.swift file, your pause light orange is lowercase p. Yeah.
Thank you. Nice catch. I was like, what is going on? Okay. All is right with the world. Thanks, Jesse. There we go. Okay, that looks a lot better. Okay, so.
Is that the outer one we're doing?
This is the outer one, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so ZStack, the higher it is, or sort of I guess the first, the closer to the top of your ZStack, the more back it is. So this is going to be kind of the thing in the back. We'll put our image in here with its own kind of circle, and it will be this other gradient here. We could even do a circle here like we have here, one more circle, and then just the image, and it doesn't even need to kind of have all of that padding. I don't know. We could do it quite a few ways actually now that I'm kind of thinking about this. So let's do this. I'm gonna say, let's grab our circle here, paste it in, so it's almost the same thing, except what I'm gonna do is, let's add some padding. Let's see if we do 5 here. Oh, you know what? Let's. Oh, that's a problem though. Yeah, maybe not. Let's. I don't think that's actually quite going to work the way I wanted it to. So let's grab an image. I'm assuming that this one's just going to be pause. Pause.
It is. It looks like there's a pause fill, but I'm thinking we should do the pause with bold like the other font. It will probably match better.
I think so. I agree. Let's do that. Whoops, not call it pause. So we'll call image with that system name, which is pause. Ooh, that is tiny. Okay, so let's call that foreground color of, what is the foreground color? It looks just straight white, so we'll just do white. Let's maybe, I'm gonna kind of go back up to where we initialized this play pause button up here and give it a size that's more accurate so we can actually look at kind of this in more realistic terms here. So let's maybe say 70 and 70. It's not bad. I don't know. What do you think? A little bigger?
Pretty good for now.
Right.
Yeah, maybe a little fatter.
Okay. Let's maybe do like 75.
So interesting with our other one, that was the first thing we did with the circle was do frame and the values. And is that are we doing effectively the equivalent here by doing it in the call, after the call?
Yeah, and so the way that this would work is this is effectively putting it at the end of everything, right?
Okay, so it kind of is not, but we're hoping it's the same effect.
Yeah, and to be honest, now that I'm thinking about this, I may say we might need to change this a little bit so that it more closely kind of does what we've got here, because I think honestly this is kind of going in a better direction than the other one. So
yeah, I think it was at line 87 we had the other one. So you're thinking line 87 is what we need to pull out.
We might pull that out and just add the frame up here. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I think one good thing to do to pass in would maybe be like as an argument to these buttons is to say, well, I mean, I guess it depends. And what I'm thinking here is if we make it so that each of these buttons, for example, these ones are really this one, it's just they're larger. We need to extract that frame out, but then these image sizes need to be a little bit bigger. So we would then probably need to, we're not passing in a, like, for example, this image frame here, we probably need a way to pass in that value for this frame here instead of it being a set 20 points, if that makes sense.
I was even thinking if it should be a percentage as well.
You could also do,
you set the size of the button and then the text inside is proportional to whatever.
Yeah, that would work. And we could use like one of those geometry readers to figure out the size and everything. That would work. Or just pass it in either way. So again, I think these are really good ideas, and I'm by no means pretending to know the best solution at all. But I think this is a much better way.
Although when you just mentioned geometry reader there, even though you would pass the width after, like our current way we're thinking, even though the width is after we make the call, the geometry reader inside our sub function would see that it was 75.
That's a good point. We might have to maybe pass in this size as well, set the frame, and then use the geometry reader after that. I think you're right. Yeah, good thinking. Good thinking. Okay, so let's go and do this. I want to see if we can do just padding. And again, this is where like figuring out some multiplier to make sure that the padding is exactly X amount away would be awesome. Let's just start with maybe, I don't know, yeah, 20 or so. And it's not going to look fantastic, but we can mess with it after the fact here. And then again, we're going to do, let's just grab this whole circle here that we just made. And then I'm just going to do dot background. And then in that initializer, or the arguments for that background modifier here, just paste that in. and then we just need to either flip the colors around or the starting point and ending point. So I'll just grab bottom trailing at the start point, and then bottom or at top leading at the start. Whoa, that is a really cool effect with very little work. And then now that we can see this, we can play around with our padding and actually make it look like it should. So let's maybe go up to 30 or so, or 32. 32 looks pretty good. Again, in very little time, with basically one modifier, we went from this looking like, that's okay, to that's really close to what we were trying to design here. Sorry, I was just trying to kind of re-indent that. Okay, questions, comments? Can I explain anything? We feeling okay with this?
It looks like another way to do that would just be to do 2 circles and then the image on top of that, and you can just put the padding right on the second circle.
That's what I was thinking. The only thing with that was we would have to give this second circle like a set frame.
I just added padding and it worked because you're getting the frame from view up top.
How did you make it just slightly more or slightly less than the frame though? Do you just do like a padding that way, or? Does that make sense?
I just added a padding to that second circle, and like I set it to 5, and it looks like a little ring around it.
Yeah, you're right. That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, that maybe is a more clean way of doing it. I was trying to think of how I could get that to work. I must have just been putting things in the wrong kind of scope here. Yeah, that works great. I think that maybe is a better way of going around it, or about it rather. So if we did that, I think having a 2 or 3 is probably pretty close. Yeah.
And then you really don't need that padding on your image anymore.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So then we can just give our image a font here. We could just start again messing around here. We do dot system, whoops, system, or what am I thinking? Font.system. And this is one thing you should know here is like, if I do font.system, it will give me style, size, basically 4 options here. But if I just do dot system, oh, never mind. It's giving me the same ones. Sometimes with colors, for example, just watch me here. Where is that? Or sorry, with shadows. If you just do dot black, like it'll recognize that as a valid color. However, if you try to do like dot opacity after that, or maybe they just fixed that in the newest version of Xcode, before it wouldn't let you do that. So never mind, we're cool. Looks okay.
It does that in UIKit too. I think the error is something like it doesn't have enough context or something.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe they've just fixed it in this in 11.4. So that's actually awesome. Okay, so we could do a style of, let's try, body's the default. Caption. We could do dot weight, bold. Is it font weight? No, that's what it should be. Oh, okay, yeah. Like for example, this, right? And then if I do font dot that, it's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So kind of looks like it is more or less doing the same thing. Let's maybe do call out larger, maybe black for the weight. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's one of the best things. I know I've already said this, but just getting that instant feedback of changing something, you don't have to sit there and rerun the simulator. It's just like you can actually, you feel like changing things around because it's almost a non-issue to do it. Okay, how are we feeling so far?
Good.
Good. Okay. Any questions? All right. So let's now think about how we can change this to be something different when it's not playing. So Mark suggested we do like a green, for example. And we could probably also change this icon to be a play icon, which I assume is just probably play. Play.fill maybe. So here is where SwiftUI becomes, I guess, a little bit weird. It's very much, it's that declarative builder syntax. We kind of write everything out in line. You can kind of do if statements, but they don't always work the way that you would want them to. What we end up doing a lot of times is using the ternary operator here. So as an example, what we could say for our image is we could say it's going to be dependent on our is playing. So I could say is playing. And if it's playing, then we'll say that it's paused. But if not, we can use that ternary operator instead and put instead that it's play.fill. So as I change this to false here, I resume it, then it's play.fill down here. As soon as I change it back, it's play dot, or it's pause. So the ternary operator becomes very much your friend in a lot of these cases. There is a way to get around this. Again, if you don't like doing this and you need more complex logic, what you can do is you could make a function that's just, you know, like, for example, let's do it for our colors here. So I'm going to put colors for, I don't know, player, or like, I don't know, is playing. Not a great name, but we're just going to return here an array of colors based on whether it's playing or not. So we can do this or our green colors that we'll get in here in just a second. So let's grab some green colors. I'm gonna kind of just mess with this here. So let's go into the assets folder, and I'm really not good with like coming up with colors here, so it's probably not gonna look fantastic, but we can kind of mess around with it. So we're gonna need to grab a darker green here. So maybe like, if anyone wants to volunteer to find some great green colors, that'd be cool. Otherwise, they're probably not gonna look great. We could do this one.
I think I'm just gonna reverse the gradient colors, so it looks like it's depressed.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I'll just make a little bit lighter one. And like, feel free to put your own colors in there. That's totally cool. Or just, you know, reverse it. That's cool too as well. So I'll just call this play green, or play light green, and play dark green.
And I'm sorry, what order are they in there? Is the first one light or dark?
The first one in there is.
I'm talking in chat.
Yeah, the first one is the lighter one, or no, the darker one. The 109.21a is the lighter one, and the 106.201a is the darker one. Just gonna real quick while we're doing that, I'm just gonna go over here, make some new constants here. So we'll do play light green. Oops. And if you're following along, I'll give you these. So you'll have to write those out. You just give me like a yes in the participants list if you're ready to go. You've got the colors in the colors .swift file, and yes, it's folder. And if you need me to go back to anywhere, let me know.
Getting those multi-cursors working.
What's that?
Getting those multiple cursors working. Like set the two cursors next to the, I copied the 15 and 16 and then just shift control clicked. So I had two cursors on the green where they're starting at the green, and I was able to type over the orange as I replace the orange with green.
Nice.
I discovered another cool trick.
Yeah.
If you hold a Control and Shift and you're on like a line and you use the left or right arrow, it'll select by the next capital letter. So like, according to this, I thought that was awesome.
That's a good one. Interesting. Good to know. Yeah, I've always just done like Option Shift, but yeah, kind of capital or kind of word by word in a sense. That's really cool. That's a good one to add as well. All right, does anyone need more time? Okay, so let's go back to our content view. And so all we're gonna do here, and this is, I think the nice part is, in line with SwiftUI, if statements are a little finicky, if they work at all. And it's been honestly a while since I've tried it. It's been probably 6 months or so. Specifically putting an if statement kind of in line here. But what you can do is just call an entirely separate function that returns whatever you're looking for, and that's your golden there. So we could just say, if is playing, then we'll return, we'll do our, what do we call it? We want to do the pause light orange and pause dark orange. Else, we're going to do the return play light green and and play dark green. And again, you could also do that with the ternary operator. I just kind of wanted to show this is a possibility if you don't want to, do a super long ternary like with this array here. So now what we can do is replace our colors here with colors for is playing for both of our circles here. And so does that look the same? Yeah. So we get that, or if I turn it to false for it's not playing, we then get the screen. Yeah, it doesn't look terrible, I guess. It doesn't look fantastic. It's a little sharp, but that's okay. So here's like the kind of bringing this full circle here. For now, what we can do in our action of our button is we can just say, you know, we probably don't have to put self here. We'll just do is playing.toggle. Oh, we do have to put self. And then I could actually run this and toggle between them. And really all that does when I change this is playing is it's almost like it's got like its own table view.reload data type of thing where it just ends up running all of this code to set up the Z stack, and it looks again and it says, oh, I just changed something about the state of my view. In that case, they probably have some logic in here that's depending on that state. So let me basically re-render this view again, and it says, oh yeah, now they want it to be green, whatever.
Why doesn't mine click?
You might have to wait for a second. There's probably a loading indicator right there. Once that goes away, then you'll be able to. Or you could also run the simulator as well. That would work.
There we go. My gradient is so jacked though, but that's okay. It's like light on the edges and dark in the middle. Like it's really weird. But that's okay. I'll mess with it later. I'm not worried about it.
All right, sounds good. So any questions on state, how this is working? Comments?
So again, mine isn't working, but all you did was you press the play on the right side. It's now like the bright blue on the right in the simulator.
Yeah, once there's a little kind of spinning wheel right here, once that's done, you should be good.
So this wouldn't work without state,
Mm-hmm.
and you just had it learn.
Yeah, so let me show you. Structs get a little bit finicky about mutating itself because it thinks, oh, this is going to be a constant, or it could be a constant. So I'm not going to give you the option of mutating some part of this struct within the struct even. And you definitely can't do that in a computed property like this body is by default, saying, hey, self is immutable, or yeah, at the very least it could be. So in that case, they've added this property. Man, I always forget what this is called. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, this little at state here to say, property wrapper, yes, thank you. To say, hey, this is cool. Like whatever behind the scenes here is just making it so that I think there's a Medium article on kind of your own implementation of this, but it's basically saying, hey, you know, when you try to set this, also re-render essentially this whole view or run this computed property again. It's okay to modify it. I can't actually remember the specifics here, but in a sense, that's more or less what it's doing, as far as my understanding goes. Brandy, it's different, but oh, sorry, Sean, were you going to say something?
I was just going to ask if you know how to get rid of like the default appearance that it gives, like when you're pressing it for the button.
I do, yes.
Okay.
You want to do something else? We're kind of out of time. However, I will give you a very small code snippet. I was just messing around with this earlier. It doesn't look fantastic. However, it is not either. It's not hard. So as an example, I just made this one go darker. And it's just this button style here. And then, so I'll give you this, and then all you do on your button is you just do .button style and then pass in a new instance of this style. And then that will let you basically trigger, you know, any kind of different look that you want when, oops, when it's tapped or in the process of being selected. So that would be kind of more or less what you want. Okay, I think that's probably all we're going to have time for today. Any last questions or comments before we kind of head out for the day here?
Just post the latest zip file as well.
Yes, definitely will.
I was just gonna say that was awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm honestly stoked with the amount of progress that we were able to have today. My only hope is you don't feel lost with what we've done. And if you do, I apologize. And if you want to go slower tomorrow, let me know. I don't want this to feel overwhelming to you. I'm trying to make this as fun as possible while also not stressing you out during your break. So I think we'll call it good there. I will definitely post this. Let me do that right now. Is there any interest in doing a maybe supplementary morning session where we maybe don't work on this so everyone can kind of stick with us?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm always down for that.
I'm down.
All right.
Yeah, always down.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do it for those that want to, and we'll maybe work on some other projects just so we don't. I'd love to like have us all get, you know, something functional at the end of the week that we could show, be like, hey, this is my first, you know, SwiftUI app or my second one or whatever, but kind of have it really be something functional. If we get to the point where we could implement Apple Music, that'd be super cool. If not, you'd have a great place to start from to do it on your own, and hopefully we can get to a point where that's possible. So
I can post the link for the API if everyone wants.
yeah, that'd be killer. All right, guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate this. I'm super glad that there's some interest in SwiftUI, and let's just kind of continue to crush it today. So my plan is, do you guys want to do a morning stand-up? I don't really feel like we need one, or no? Since we're all kind of working together, I don't really feel like we need one. Is anyone going to be super distraught if we don't do one?
Nope.
All right.
I
Sounds
don't think I've ever been distraught by not having a stand-up.
okay. That's fair. That's fair. Let's see. What do we say about maybe 9 o'clock? So normally when like you would have a guided project for those of you that want to hang out in the morning, is that cool?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Awesome. All right, guys. Have a great afternoon, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. See ya.